All right. So welcome everyone to today's Coaching Cafe, which is on the use of AI in coaching, looking at the HR function and coaching. For those of you who are new, my name's Paula Jones-Hunt. I am the resident HR specialist here at Open Door Coaching. I'm flying solo today, so no Natalie with me today. So I'm going to be looking for lots of really great contribution from everybody on the line. So if you're listening to us on your streaming platforms, welcome. We are always very excited to have everybody at our Coaching Cafe. As I begin, let me just press the right buttons. As I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today and their continuing connection to the land, water and communities of Australia and the lands from all around the world upon which you might be joining us. We pay our respects to them and their elders past, present and emerging, and elders from Indigenous communities around the world. Our podcast goes all around the world, and it is and I would like to pay my respects to all the Indigenous communities around the world. All right, so what are we going to look at today? Well, today we're going to continue on our theme from the last few weeks, which is the trends in coaching. And AI is one of the really big trends that came out. Natalie took you through some information last week about AI and coaching tools. We're going to look at the use of AI in HR and how it intersects with that from that coaching perspective. As always, we're always all about creating a community, creating shared learning experiences. I always look forward to the comments that people put in. It's about adding to the thoughts and building on ideas. And hopefully we'll have some thought-provoking conversation today. And for those of you who are looking for your ICF CCEs, they will be available at the end of the session. All right, here we go. So the use of AI in HR and coaching, my little caveat here is that we are not experts, but we are explorers. So ever since this topic came up as a really big one as trends for this year, Natalie and I have been delving into it and having a look and seeing what does it mean? What could it mean? Where could we get advantages from this? So if there's anyone on the line who is an expert, please jump in, because I'm absolutely claiming up front, not an expert, but I am an explorer, and we are checking it out and trying to see what we can find. So I thought I'd start off a little bit with the development of AI in HR. Oh, and so for those of you on the line, I've spent about 25 years or so working in the HR space. In 2008, I discovered coaching and how it linked in with HR, and I've considered myself to be a coaching HR practitioner ever since, just so that you've got some background as to who I am and what I do. So from the development perspective of AI in HR, in the early 2000s, we started seeing applicant tracking and resume screening software. So, you know, being able to have a system that reviewed resumes and then spit out the ones that it thought that best suited the roles that we were looking at for. So that was sort of in that early 2000s space. In 2010, in the 2010s, it moved into broader range of capabilities, such as engagement surveys that actually provided suggestions for improving employee engagement. So I worked with a number of organisations, and when we did an engagement survey, the systems would then be able to say to a manager, well, in your team, these are some of the things that were identified, and here are some suggestions for how you might improve engagement in this particular area. So it's been around for a while, and we've been sort of moving with it, and now it feels like it's really gaining some momentum. So in the 2020s, we're moving into this predictive analysis. So what might happen in the future? So if you think about workforce planning, if you're putting in the data that we've previously had, and it can add in worldwide data and says this is how many staff you might need to have for over a particular season, or and really digging into some more of that work. So it's not just here's some information, spit it out. It's now analysing it and giving you predictions based on that. So that's really where the development of AI and HR has been moving. I think it's moving now at a more rapid space or pace. Yeah. So how prevalent is it? It's a very good question. I asked Google Analytics, how prevalent is it? So according to IDC's Future of Work research, 80% of global 2000 companies will use algorithmic managers for hiring, firing, and training workers by 2024. So this is taking the that recruitment piece and really and meaning that all 80% of managers will be using it in some way, shape, or form. Interesting in that training bit is that the ability for someone to be able to input information about themselves and their career and where they want to go, and then being directed to training that might be of use for them. And the Future of Work survey by Eightfold AI found that the top 5 functions where HR departments are currently using AI technology are employee records management, payroll processing and benefits administration. This was a really interesting one for me because when I delved into what they're actually using it for, is it's the ability for a payroll system to identify errors before payrolls are made. So as opposed to having someone casting an eye over it, it will actually it can pick up if there's an anomaly or if something hasn't been paid or amazing things. And I don't know about anyone who's ever worked in payroll. I've particularly stayed out of that payroll space. But for HR practitioners, correcting things after there's a payroll issue is actually quite painful. And it links to employee engagement. If people don't get paid correctly, it really impacts. So having AI sitting behind and being able to perhaps pick those things up before it happens, I'm all for that one. In recruitment and hiring, and we're seeing that it's progressing as well. So it's not just resume screening now, it's resume screening and identifying. You can also use it for things like what great questions could I ask this particular candidate in an interview. So it's really progressing as it's going through. Performance management, this one is something that I think is going to be really helpful. And I actually gave this a go, gave it a go this week, putting in some great questions, was around, if you think about it, managers who have to write performance management, your annual performance review. I have lots of managers who say, I just don't know what I'm supposed to write in this. It's sort of an art form, being able to write something. So this is an opportunity where the managers could actually say, this is how someone performed this year. What should I say on their performance in their performance review? And actually means that you're moving that really great conversation, as it should be. A performance review conversation should really highlight what someone's done over the period of time and remind people of the great stuff that they've done, as well as pick up areas for improvement. But to get a really great quality conversation is what all HR practitioners are aiming for with managers. And this is an opportunity where they can actually jump in and go, I want to give this feedback. What's the best way to do it? What a great opportunity. Or how do I write this so that it really makes that person feel valued when they're reading what I've written in their performance review. And then onboarding. There's some really super cool things that are happening out there. A bit nerdy for me, this one. Things like virtual reality, where you can, before someone starts in their role, they can go through a virtual reality process where they can see where they'll be working, like the building. And in retail, for example, I saw that you can, a staff member who doesn't work in retail but works in head office can go through a process where they can see what a customer would feel like as they're walking through the retail store, and how that might play out with the staff in the retail space. So in this onboarding place, there's a whole bunches of really cool things that are going to come out of that. So there's lots of spaces across HR where I can see that AI is going to make a really big impact. Oh, and now here we go. Still moving. Sorry, everybody. So as I was going through, I was looking, where is the greatest benefit for HR? And for me, the biggest benefit is the ability of AI to remove the repetitive operational work so that HR practitioners can shift their priority to providing more strategic value to the business. So if there's any of the HR people on the line, please jump in regards to this. But for me, I always wanted to be having the great coaching conversations with managers and working on what does this mean for us and how do we use this information and where do we get the greatest value from how we're doing things. I didn't always love the repetitive operational HR work, I won't lie. So things like payroll were never something that I particularly loved, or, having to do, all sorts of that operational space. So what if AI could help us with that? And one of the things I saw was little chatbots. So we've now got HR departments that have a chatbot, which is where you can go and ask them questions. So some of those really basic HR questions like, where do I find the annual leave policy? This is a form I need to use. I can't seem to find this form. The ability for the chatbot to actually be able to go and answer those questions, so it's not another email that comes into your inbox. So removing some of those really repetitive operational pieces of work allows you to play in the really fun space, as far as I'm concerned. So if anyone has any other benefits they can see from a HR perspective, please chuck it in. And Annie's put in there, fantastic resource for creative thinkers to utilise in business. And if untapped, it aspires staff to use their creative thought ability in this space. I really love this idea that it's about broadening, right? So you only know what you know, but what if you could know more? What if there were other, I like this idea, Annie, about the creativeness. What if you can be creative about something? What if it helps people who are not creative to have some creativity, to think bigger, to think broader in that HR space? Thank you, Annie. I really love that one. Creative thinking to be utilised in business. Moving outside of the what do we know to what do we don't know and how can we create this? And if you think about in that psychological safety space, the psychological safety space talks about the fact that we want people who don't think the same as us to feel safe, to be able to raise ideas and bring different thoughts to the table. What if AI was supporting those people to be able to do that? Whoa, just delving into all sorts of things now. Ben Robinson said, a great place to get help with generating ideas, options, and approaches. Absolutely. So if a manager's thinking, I've got a staff member, I'm not sure what to do, pop it into AI. And we'll talk a little bit more about when you're putting things into AI, what you might need to really focus on. But what if your HR person's not available right at that particular time and you need help right now? What if you could be checking in with AI and putting the question in and getting some ideas so that you don't feel stuck at that particular point? And look, HR people don't know absolutely everything. I will tell you that. And what if HR people need to be able to put those sorts, what if we could delve into AI and be asking those sorts of questions as well? What don't I know in this space? What could I learn more about in this space? Where could I find more information about in this space? So from a HR practitioner perspective, how can I be adding to my wealth of knowledge and information and gaining further development in this space? So for me, it was about removing some of those repetitive operational works. in saying that, there is a question too about, does that mean we remove the HR admin type roles? And like all things, if you've got a bot who does the same thing, then it could possibly be that some of those the entry level type roles, the work that they're doing at the moment might be taken over by a bot. But to me, that then says, well, what's the opportunity for us to redesign those roles? What could those entry-level roles be doing now that they don't have to do some of that repetitive operational work? So it's looking at it from the both sides. Yes, it might, but we still have to have entry-level HR roles. HR practitioners don't just emerge from nowhere. So what is that next opportunity for HR in those entry-level roles? If the basics type work is no longer available. So where does AI coaching and HR interact? And this is where I'd love for everybody to jump in about this one. So I've talked a little bit about some of them, but let's see what else we can generate. So some of the ideas were in those scenarios, like being able to put a scenario together, and then getting some information from ChatGPT about how you can approach that. So, for example, a manager could put in, I've got a staff member who I need to deliver some bad news to. What's the best way to do that? And the difference between Google and the ChatGPT is about how it continues to answer the question. So Google might give you a list of the top 3 or 4 tips on how to have the conversation. What ChatGPT and other AI products allow you to do is then to continue further in the conversation. So it could be that the first question, and this is where how you ask the question to ChatGPT really counts. If you remember when we went back, when Google first came up, it was an art form about figuring out, how do I ask Google the question in order to get the information that I ask? And you had to adapt, and put it in, you put it into questions and things come up. It's very much the same with ChatGPT. And if you think about that scenario base, I'm a manager, I put the question, I've got a staff member, I need to have a difficult conversation, and it will give you an answer. And then you can start probing further with, what happens if that staff member cries, which I know lots of managers are not very good with, and it will come up with some options for you. What if that staff member gets angry? How can I approach it to make sure that I'm considerate of a staff member's mental health? These are all things that you can really delve into when you're using a scenario-based approach in ChatGPT. So this is like, how do I get lots of scenarios in there, and think about how this will really work for me when I'm having that conversation? Unfortunately, when you're having a conversation with a staff member, you can't be sitting there typing things into ChatGPT so that you can then say it back to the staff member. So if you want to know where HR sits from this perspective, it's in helping managers gain the confidence to be having those conversations and knowing how to respond when things don't necessarily follow what you think they will. Humans are beautiful people who, even as good as ChatGPT is, cannot determine how an individual is going to respond to something. So we still have to work with managers on building up their capability to be able to respond if the person doesn't respond exactly the way ChatGPT might suggest that they do. We still need to help them build those, as they used to be called, soft skills on empathy. How will you display empathy? And ChatGPT can give you some very good examples of how you can do it, but the manager actually needs to be able to do it. So for me, that's where HR is still going to connect in this, and coaches. So taking that HR coaching approach, we're still going to be required when it's the physicality of how you do it. And he said too, great as a laser knowledge on skill building with a focus on chunking up and down questions. Yes, how do you chunk it up or chunk it down? How do you make the questions bigger? How do you bring the focus from the basic to a bird's eye view of something? Or how do you take someone from a bird's eye view and bring it down to but what can we do today? Trish added, great to keep conversations on task without digressing too far. Absolutely. How do you help that person make sure that the conversation goes where you need it to go without going too far? One of the other intersections I have is the question bank. So being able to generate great questions that managers can have available to them, and adding to them. I sort of see question banks as being a moving object. They're a growing document, a growing living document that you just keep adding to. And for managers, being able to access those question banks. What's a great question I can ask for this? How do I ask this question without offending somebody? All really great things that you can, that AI can really assist you with. Eric said, they say that HR will always protect the company over the employee. It will be interesting to see what AI comes up with in difficult conversations relating to grievances and complaints. Yeah, absolutely. Although, Eric, I don't necessarily, from a HR perspective, I've always looked at holistically both, because I look at it from the perspective of, if you have really great employees who are happy, then it will link into the company, and boards will always be happy, because happy employees equal productivity equals great benefits to it means they make money, basically. Let's go with that. But I have been in places where I've seen that it is protect the company versus the employee. So it will be interesting. Look, I really like this idea of, what if the grievances and complaints did go through an AI process, and it came out with information or insights that as a person we can't see, or because we know too much. What if it came out with where it sat, what's the result of this grievance, based on being able to put in the notes and the like from those conversations, and come out with an unbiased response. Although there is a question about bias from an AI perspective. How well has unbiased been built into the system, given who created AI? I don't know, but as someone who's done a truckload of grievances and complaints in my lifetime, and it's one of the things I would avoid at all costs these days. What if it could be inputted, and what if it could be inputted and AI came out with some really targeted questions that you would then need to go and find out the answers to? I don't know. I think that's an option as well. The last area that I put on there was about connecting strategy to the organisation. So this is where I see that HR coaching intersect with AI, is that once you've got the information, is how are we actually going to do this? So from a HR perspective, it's working with senior leaders around, we know this is what the strategy is, and AI can give you some very, very good examples of how you might roll this out. But now we have to apply this to, how do we roll this out in our organisation? And thinking about options that have come up from AI, what are going to, in that decision-making process, what are going to be the best options for us in our organisation, understanding the context of our people and what we do. So for me, and that's the fun stuff as far as I'm concerned, that AI will be able to give you excellent information and do amazing analysis on lots of things. But then but what does that mean for us? How do we connect this to what our values are? How do we connect this to what our strategic plan is? And what are the things we're actually going to do So at a point, you have to have a decision-making piece. And I think that's where HR comes into, and coaching comes in, to ask those questions of the senior leaders, to be able to say, so we've got these options. What is going to be the best option? How are we going to implement that? What will that look like? What else have we not considered that we need to consider? What else, even, what else do we need to plug into AI? What questions haven't we asked it to make sure that we get the really great information? So it's about taking it and making it practical and implementing it based on the needs of the organization. So I guess from that perspective, that's what I came up with as I was going through, and I absolutely thank everyone who's put in some suggestions as well. If there's something that I've missed, absolutely, please let me know about it. And I guess this is about that exploring phase that says, what else can we find out about this? Where else can I get some information? How else could we apply this to HR that would make a difference? How else can we use this in our coaching to help the people that we're coaching understand what might be coming? So if anyone has any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to take any and all of them, or any other comments as well would be great. So our time has come to an end, but before we go, I just wanted to remind people about some of the programs that we have. So we have our Leader as Coach. We're now actually changed this to team coaching. So it's all about, how do I coach my team? We have the mental health first aid. This can be run in-house. We have our certificate for in workplace and business coaching, and the diploma of organisational coaching. Just a little note too, that there is some government funding for those of us who are old, over the age of 40, and it's ending on the 30th of June. So if you've been thinking about it, now is the time to get onto it. If you head to our website, you'll find all the information that you need there. All right, so I would like to thank you all so very much for your time today, and all of the everyone's contribution was fantastic. I'm going to stop the recording, but if you want to hang on the line, I will have your CCEs for you. Let me see if I can. Oh, hang on, I will come back to this as soon as I've stopped the recording.